turn that around.
But I think that sort of building on Paul's point there is the relative valuation case for riskier assets. Is that predicated on yields remaining this low and going lower?
No, I think that, it's predicated on the idea that we're in a relatively low inflation, relatively low interest rate environment going forward for the next several years. And I think that there's an argument to be made that for a variety of reasons that well predate any kind of epidemic that was going to be the game going forward.
All right. So for your model right now, at Silvercrest, what's your GDP kind of outlook for the next, several quarters? Is there that recession word out there for you?
It's possible, and it was possible throughout last year because of the trade war. But I would say, so what are my estimate for GDP this year was 2%. That was before any kind of epidemic took place. What are we seeing already? The first hint, the January numbers in the U.S. economy were really quite good. So going into February, what are we seeing? We've just got the first real taste of what it might be, which is the market PMI flash. And that showed the U.S. economy going into mild contraction, led by services, which is interesting because manufacturing has been the thing that has been weighing down the U.S. economy over the past half year or so. Now it's actually services, tourism, and transport going into contraction. So, and what we're also seeing is that on the manufacturing side, the supply chain disruptions are there, but companies so far are managing that by drawing down inventories or reallocating inventories. But that can't last forever, especially if China remains closed for business and if that extends to other countries, Europe, throughout Asia.
Do you still, when you say go into risk, is that go into U.S. equities or is that to go into European equities?
I think you want to be diversified when it comes to that because you don't just want to be saying one risk. But certainly let me give you an example. There are places that are risky around the world or perceived as risky around the world, like the Middle East, but the risks are entirely different. They're not U.S. recession risks. They're not even global recession risks. There are other types of risks. So you want to be diversified in many different kinds of risks. But that said, even when it comes to U.S. recession risk, you are now being paid of going through a recession with your equities and coming out the other end. And unless you're able to time that, but if you're simply somebody who's saying, should I be for the next 3 to 5 years in a safe harbor or in equities, I would say you want to be allocated towards equities, recognizing that you may need to buckle up.
Patrick Shavanik, economic advisor to Silvercrest Asset Management, joining us here in our interactive broker studios. Thank you. And as he says, uncorrelated, I think, Lebanese bonds. That's highly uncorrelated right now. And a really interesting story as they teeter on the potential insolvency there. I'm Lisa Abramowitz with Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg.
That saying, success breeds success.
What am I saving for? My passion. Food photography.
I'd train to be a landscape garden designer.
Open a food stall and sell my famous fish tacos.
I'd go to stuntman school.
I'd be a wedding planner.
I'd start a dog grooming business. Sorry, we'd start a dog grooming business.
What are you waiting for? Make your one day happen with a Fidelity Stocks and Shares ISA. Your capital is at risk. Tax rules may change. Full terms for our Stocks and Shares ISA are available on our website, 18 plus UK residents.
If you're going to have NHS dental treatment, don't assume you can claim it for free. Not all benefits entitle you to free treatment. And if you claim when you're not entitled, you could face a penalty charge of £100, plus the cost of your treatment. Thankfully, the NHS Eligibility Checker will help you find out if you can claim for free. Then next time you're at the dentist, you'll know exactly which box to tick. Search Check Before You Tick online today.
Taking it for a spin has changed. Giving it a whirl has changed. With £500 towards a qualifying new Vauxhall with 4.9% APR representative when you take a test drive, the rules have changed. Book your test drive this weekend. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Allowance provided as deposit contribution on qualifying new Vauxhalls. Conditional sale and personal contract purchase only. Subject to status. T's and C's. 18 plus Vauxhall Finance. Registered by 2nd of April 2020. Search Try Your New Vauxhall.
The moment you realise that radiator isn't warming up, it's chilly in London, and half the class are coming for a sleepover. The moment you realise you're covered by British Gas Home Care from £14 a month. That's just 46p a day, including parts and labour. Buy selected home care cover online by the 10th of March and get 1 month free. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas Home Care. Conditions apply. Prices vary by postcode.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Business app and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, we're going to talk a little politics. We're going to get a post-mortem on a South Carolina Democratic debate. Plus, we're going to take a look at the Walt Disney Company and that surprising news that CEO Bob Iger is standing down. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of a Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Well, Paul, we're just a touch off earlier highs, but we're still well into the green. And this is the first time I've been able to say that in 5 days. Investors are continuing to watch the coronavirus and waiting for a presidential address and press conference this evening at 6 o'clock Wall Street time. The dollar is up. Bill Ford, General Atlantic CEO, tells Bloomberg their investments in China have most definitely been affected by the coronavirus.
Our online companies, which is about 75% of our portfolio, including ByteDance, NetEase Music, and some others, are actually benefiting from the virus and people staying at home using online channels. Conversely, our offline consumer investments and some of our healthcare investments are being negatively impacted.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 1.3%, up 41. The Dow's up 1.3%, up 345. And the Nasdaq's up 1.6%, up 142. The 10-year is up 2/30 seconds. The yield is 1.34%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up 0.2% at $50 even per barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.6% at $16.39.80 an ounce. The dollar yen is at 110.56. The euro $1.865, and the British pound is $1.29.15. New home sales in the U.S. are up for the start of the year, reaching the strongest pace since mid-2007. Cheaper borrowing costs and favorable weather and a resilient labor market are cited as reasons. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues now with Lisa and Paul.
Greg, thank you so much. Right now, again, my favorite segment of the day, of the week, we have our own Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks Editor, here to talk about small and mid-cap shares. And really, I think it is important to highlight this sector right now because it is underperforming yet again on the way up, as there is sort of a knee-jerk rebound of sorts, a rebound a little bit overly dramatic given what we've seen over the past 2 days in large caps. But just how much is the underperformance at this point, Dave?
Well, you're talking about half a percentage point, roughly. The Russell 2000 index up 0.8%. The S&P 500 up 1.3%. If you look at the last 12 months, the gap is even wider. The Russell just turned higher for that period. It's up 0.5% for the 12 months. S&P 500 up 13.5%.
It's just, it blows my mind because people are saying the U.S. is more immune and that they should actually, that companies that are less leveraged to the international community should be doing better. I'm not going to take away from your time. Carry on. What are the movers?
Biggest gain in the Russell belongs to B&G Foods. The ticker here is BGS. The food maker has risen 20%. Earnings and revenue for the fourth quarter surpassed analyst average estimates in a Bloomberg survey. You've got BioXcel Therapeutics, ticker BTAI, up about 17%. H.C. Wainwright more than tripled its 12-month share price estimate for the drug developer at $95. And to put that in context, BioXcel trading at about $34.75 at the moment. And Vir Biotechnology, ticker VIR, is up about 18%, sort of bouncing around as these stocks often do. The drug developer agreed to work with China's WuXi Biologics on a coronavirus treatment. Now, the Russell's steepest drop belongs to Menlo Therapeutics, ticker MNLO. That drug developer has fallen 25%. A proposed treatment for itchy skin failed in a second-stage study. And Dycom Industries, ticker DY, is down 21%. The builder of phone and power networks had a wider fourth-quarter loss than analysts expected.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Well, last night the Democrats got together once again for another debate, this time in Charleston, South Carolina, to get kind of a postmortem on what we saw and heard last night. We welcome Gregory Cordy. He is the national political reporter for Bloomberg News based in Washington, D.C. Gregory, thanks so much for joining us. What were your key takeaways from the debate last night?
Well, this was sort of a sequel to the last debate before Nevada, the Nevada caucus last week, because it's a second debate where Michael Bloomberg was a participant, and he really he's sort of like the new character that has been introduced into this drama mid-season, right? And has really sort of shaken up that dynamic. He's a useful foil to candidates like Bernie Sanders, who obviously are campaigning against the billionaire class. Michael Bloomberg is a billionaire. But he's also a little out of step with maybe the ideological center of the Democratic Party on economic issues, certainly. He's a former Republican three-term mayor of New York. So all that provides interesting grist for the debate. And so we saw a sequel to that last night with, attacks back and forth. And we have Bernie Sanders has emerged as the front runner after Nevada. It's very clear he was center stage last night for the first time. And so that changed the chemistry as well. Candidates getting increasingly desperate to knock him down a peg before Super Tuesday.
Yeah, it's unclear whether they actually did. We should say, in addition to all of the labels that you put on Bloomberg, he's also the founder and the majority owner of Bloomberg LP, which is the owner of this radio station and organization. Just for a disclaimer, I do want to get your sense, though, Gregory, to take a broader step back, who the big winner was. A lot of people are saying it was President Trump, that this process of the Democrats, the candidates getting around in a circle and firing at each other is not beneficial. Do you agree? I mean, have you heard anyone arguing against that?
Well, certainly we've had 10 debates so far, and after every single debate, we get a press release from the Trump campaign saying Trump won the debate. So I wouldn't put too much stock in that, but I will say that, there were candidates on the stage last night who made sort of a similar point. Tom Steyer at one point in the debate saying, look, if our choice as Democrats is between a guy who used to be a Republican and, a Democratic socialist, and there's nothing in the center, then that spells doom for our party come November. I think there's, for all of those 5 candidates in the middle, between Sanders and Bloomberg, there was a real sort of yearning for some return to the center and a feeling that one way or another, this Democratic car is going to veer off the road and off the cliff.
So, Gregory, give us a preview. What do you think, or what do the Democrats believe or hope will happen on Super Tuesday?
Well, it's really tough to tell and really unpredictable at this point. Some of it will depend on what happens in South Carolina on Saturday. If Joe Biden has a good showing and he's saying that he will finish first, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So if he doesn't finish first, I think that's a real problem for him, and it's hard to see how he can go on much longer. If he does have a good showing, though, it shows that there's maybe some fight in Biden after all. He moves on to Super Tuesday states, which may be a little bit more friendly to him, where his name recognition might carry a little bit more weight. But on the other hand, we have Michael Bloomberg entering the race with his $500 million so far in advertising, a lot of which is run run in Super Tuesday states, so he's got to be a factor. And then the biggest prize on Super Tuesday, and as a matter of fact, the biggest prize of the entire nomination season is California with its 415 delegates, and Bernie Sanders is very strong there. So you can make a case for a number of different candidates in a number of different places, and we'll just have to see how the delegates add up.
Gregory Corte, thank you so much for being with us. Gregory Corte is a national political reporter for Bloomberg News. Just taking a look at markets, we are seeing a bit of a rebound. Again, hard to call it a rebound given the incredible steep sell-off that we saw yesterday and the day before. That said, the NASDAQ leading the gains up 1.6%, S&P and Dow up 1.2%. Vince Signorella, who is the whisperer in my ear as far as what the action is all about, who is our macro strategist and a squawk contributor and voice for us here at Bloomberg. He's basically saying that there's a lot of machine-driven trading today, and it's different from the past few days. And so you're seeing that's the volatility that you're seeing that's sort of bleeding into the market, which is interesting because you're seeing it more in equities than you are in bonds.
Yeah, and I think, for an equity investor here, just a little bit of stability today. If you could go look back on today and say we had a little bit of stability in the market, maybe setting a little bit of a floor, I think a lot of equity investors would take that.
Yeah, although I will say this, we have right now 10-year yields lower on the day after making all-time lows yesterday. So back to a new all-time low. I mean, you just have to wonder at what point bonds and stocks are sending different messages when the really gravity is lower for yields no matter what. Right now, let's head down to 99 Win Studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with World and National Headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, the U.S. has just updated its travel advisory to Italy in light of the coronavirus, telling Americans to exercise caution before traveling there. That's as Brazil reported its first infection in a 61-year-old man who had recently been to northern Italy. That has become Europe's epicenter of the outbreak. President Trump will hold a news conference tonight on the coronavirus, but we're getting a preview of what he might have to say this morning from Health Secretary Alex Azar, who's testifying on Capitol Hill.
The risk right now is very low to Americans. We have been, as Larry Kudlow said, from a public health perspective, we technically are in a state of containment in the United States. We have had 14 domestically identified cases here from non-repatriation. That has remained the case now for 15 days.
The White House is asking for $2.5 billion in emergency funds to combat the novel coronavirus. Democrats don't like that some of the money the White House wants would come out of Ebola funding. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is calling for $8.5 billion. Again, the president's news conference is set for 6 p.m. Wall Street time. You'll be able to hear it live here on Bloomberg Radio. 3 days before the South Carolina Democratic primary, that state's most powerful lawmaker is getting behind Joe Biden.
I can think of no one with the integrity, no one more committed to the fundamental principles that make this country what it is.
House Democratic Whip Jim Clyburn made that announcement this morning. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
If you promise to cover the latest financial and business news from Asia,
we're talking about social enterprises in Asian countries
with expert analysts who really understand Asia.
Aren't you encouraged with respect to U.S.-China trade?
Then you must be us.
Tell us about the trend within this part of the world.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
What sort of fiscal stimulus do you think we'll see?
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance. Say hi, guys. When I adopted them, I discovered that they both have incredible personalities. Chance's sole purpose in life is to love and to be loved. Frankie is a little bit of a scoundrel and always entertaining. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
If
if you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba.
Please be done.
Over and over and over and over and over. Then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. In-depth analysis.
For centuries, Welsh farmers have been perfecting the balance between maintaining the spectacular landscapes of Wales while producing delicious lamb and beef. Lucky for us, we have everything we need from the elements: grass, rainwater, and a whole lot of pride. Sustainability is key as we continue to work in harmony with our surroundings to bring you a plate that's uniquely Welsh. It's in the taste. Learn more at eatwelshlamandwelshbeef.com.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
I'll read Stan. Will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, I'll try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Want an easier way to run your business and take payments? You want Square. Whatever your business, sync it all together seamlessly with Square's integrated point-of-sale software, hardware, and e-commerce tools to make sure everything's square at the end of the month. Square is there whether you're taking payments for Square meals or Square extensions, squaring off your account, squaring up with your supplier, trading in Cathedral Square, or invoicing clients in Leicester Square. With no long-term contracts, no wonder millions of businesses around the globe have gone Square. Visit square.com/UK to learn more. And go Square. Authorised by the Financial Conduct Authority for the provision of payment services.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
3, 2, 1, lift off! What have you done with my OCT eye scanner? I'm supposed to be doing an eye scan with Mrs. Green.
We launched it, like you said.
Well, I meant launch it to the public, not on a rocket. Oh. Tell them how it takes a hospital-grade 3D image that could help detect eye conditions up to 4 years earlier.
Oh, sugar.
And that it's available at Specsavers.
Oh, and now also in outer space. Introducing our most advanced eye exam with OCT scans. Search Specsavers OCT to find out more. Charge applies. OCT available at selected stores.
This is the sound of a Halifax customer who used to worry he wasn't saving enough, but is now saving the change every time he hops on a bus. Switch on Save the Change, and when you use your Halifax Visa debit card, we'll round up to the nearest pound and put the difference into your chosen Halifax savings account.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks come off earlier highs, but are still well up. Investors are waiting and waiting for a presidential news conference on the topic of coronavirus at 6 Wall Street time, and hoping the CDC, which will also be at the event, will have good news, or at least not bad news. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 currently up 1.3%, up 42. The Dow's up 1.3%, up 360, and the Nasdaq's up 1.6%, up 146. The 10-year is up 2/32. The yield is 1.34%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 0.25% at $50.03 a barrel, while COMEX gold is down 0.6% at $16.40 even per ounce. The dollar yen, 110.51. The euro, $1.0875. And the British pound, $1.2921. Analysts are now taking aim at home builders, with Raymond James cutting Toll Brothers and SunTrust downgrading D.R. Horton. Right now, let's take a look at Toll Brothers, down 11%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, Disney dropped a bomb last night. Surprising, some will say shocking news that Bob Iger, the longtime CEO, well-regarded CEO, is stepping down, and that Bob Chapek, who leads the theme parks, is going to take over immediately as CEO. Tara LaChapelle, entertainment, telecommunications, and deals columnist for Bloomberg Opinion, joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Tara, you're out with a really great column today on this news. Did it surprise you as much as it surprised me?
Oh my gosh. I saw the email hit my inbox around 4 p.m. yesterday, and the subject line was Bob Chapek to be named Disney CEO, and my mouth was just gaping, and I'm like, what? I had these sort of negative thoughts race through my mind, as I'm sure other people did too. Like, the abrupt nature of it made me wonder, is Iger sick? Is there some sort of Me Too moment that's about to unfold once again in Hollywood? And of course, none of that ended up being the case, at least as we know right now. But just how abrupt it was, and who he chose as the CEO wasn't necessarily who a lot of people thought was the top pick. So I think it just caught people off guard, and I certainly was left just thinking, wow, and what is this going to mean?
So I guess a lot of investors thought that Kevin Mayer, the executive who runs the direct-to-consumer business, which includes Disney Plus and Hulu and ESPN Plus, the streaming business, is what a lot of people feel like are the future of the Walt Disney Company, that he might get the nod here. What do you think? How do you think this played out here?
It's really interesting because I read Iger's memoir last year, Ride of a Lifetime, he published in September, and throughout the book he kept talking highly of Mayer. Very few mentions of Bob Chapek, who is a really long-time executive of Disney, and I think probably a good choice for CEO, but it was just interesting that he wasn't mentioned that often. And in the acknowledgments of the book, Iger even called Mayer like the best strategic partner you could ask for, basically. And just that word partner, it just made me feel like, this guy is definitely the next in line for when Iger retires, which his retirement date was supposed to be next year. So when it was Chapek, it makes you wonder, is there some backstory here? Is this going to create some friction? I don't know what's going to happen now.
If you take a step back, it's sort of surprising because you think the streaming business is the future for Disney. That's sort of how they put it out there. That seems to be the future of media. And yet their theme park business has done reliably well. It just seems odd that they wouldn't put someone in charge who specializes in what seems to be the future of media, no?
Right, yeah. I mean, if Disney is signaling to investors that Disney Plus and streaming are the future of the company, and that's why they're plowing all this money into it, and, earnings are going to take a hit from this year, that they're thinking this is worth it because this is the new Disney. And then to name someone CEO who really hasn't worked on that side of the company, who's come from the theme park side, who for a long time ran the home video business and the consumer products division, it does send a little bit of a confusing message, though I think that's why this transition period may be really important. Iger's going to stick around for the next 22 months as executive chairman. It sounds like he's going to have this sort of amorphous role where he's helping on the creative side of the business. So it feels like he put all the strategic assets in place that he wanted, and now he's handing them over to Chapek to run, while Iger makes sure that they keep that sort of creative prowess. And it comes at an interesting time, right? Because Disney has all these theme parks worldwide. They have the cruise ships. They have their movie theater business. They rely on movie theater attendance. And so at a time when coronavirus is potentially, entering that pandemic stage, and the CDC is warning what's going to happen in the U.S., you're going to have a guy in charge of Disney who really knows that business well. And then Iger isn't sort of the face of any of those challenges. He gets to go out on that high note, I think.
What do we know about Bob Chapek? Because he's not really well known. Maybe to certain investors, yes, but the public, no.
He's not well known. He hasn't done a whole lot of public interviews and stuff, but he's definitely well respected and well liked inside and outside the company. So I think people are probably comfortable with the decision, but they were just more taken by surprise by the timing of it and the way it happened, and that there was no mention of Kevin Mayer, who is obviously really important to the company if he's running the streaming business, and it remains to be seen whether he sticks around down and what happens there. But I think, it wasn't so much the choice of Bob Chapek that was an issue. I think people are probably, comfortable with that decision. And it sounds like Iger and the board had been preparing for this for a while and said that he was the top candidate for quite some time. So they seem really comfortable with it. And I don't think investors will be bothered by that, but they just want to know, is there a bigger story to this?
And looking at Disney shares, they're now at the lowest since April of last year. And I'm just wondering, what do you think is the main question that investors want answered right now?
I think, is Disney going to be successful in streaming, and how? Because, even though they've signed up 26 million customers for Disney Plus, they're not really going to be making a lot of money on that service for quite some time. And there's going to be all these new competitors coming out. So to replace the profit stream that they get from their traditional media business is going to be really hard to do. And also, they had that huge year last year in the theaters with Avengers Endgame being the highest grossing film of all time. How do they top themselves? And so I think that those are the questions. And, Bob Chapek, he's going to have a lot of work to do now. Iger put a lot of things in place for him, but they're at this inflection point. And, what is Disney?
Yep, exactly right. I also think, Lisa, just in response to your question, I think some of the near-term weakness has been the coronavirus, because the parks in Shanghai and Hong Kong have been shut down for a month, and that's costing them money. The cruise ships, as Tara was mentioning, and maybe even the domestic parks as well.
Although looking at their shares, they're down more than 12% year to date. Yep. So it's been kind of a rough ride after a pretty good year.
Yeah, exactly right. So interesting news coming out of Disney. Tara LaChapelle, thanks so much for joining us. We always appreciate your opinions. You can read all of Tara's work on Bloomberg.com/opinion and OPIN Go, plus all the other great work coming out of Bloomberg Opinion. She covers entertainment, telecommunications, and deals for Bloomberg Opinion. So looking at Disney stock down about 1%, and as Lisa mentioned, down about 12% for the year. The market's holding on to their gains here. Looking at the S&P, the Dow, both up about 1.5, 1.6% today. So holding the gains, giving some stability back to the market. The NASDAQ doing even better. We have the NASDAQ up about 1.9% today. So trying to claw back a little bit of the sharp decline that the market has experienced over the past 2 days. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks halting its 5-day slide as investors are tracking the latest developments on the spread of the coronavirus. President Trump plans to brief the public later today. The healthy housing market didn't help Lowe's. The home improvement chain posted fourth quarter sales that missed estimates. Since 2018, the company has sold off divisions, closed underperforming stores, and revamped operations. Starbucks is adding a fake meat breakfast sandwich to a majority of its locations in Canada. The item will be available March 3rd. The coffee giant is weighing a plant-based sandwich for the U.S., but said it didn't have more information yet. And more than half of recent flyers think the process of air travel, from booking tickets to going to the airport, is more stressful than going to work. The survey from travel platform The Points Guy also found that 2 in 5 flyers feel the air travel process is more stressful than going to the dentist or spending the day with the in-laws. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers. In-depth analysis.
I'm Peter Jones. Lifting business performance is critical in today's uncertain times. But how do you keep up with changing regulations and rising demands? How do you break free from manual processes to raise productivity? The answer is technology that elevates performance and comes with industry-leading support. Over 1 million UK businesses, including my investment group, trust Sage to manage their finances, operations and people.
Elevate your business today with our free performance review. Visit sage.com/perform.
If you're going to have NHS dental treatment, don't assume you can claim it for free. Not all benefits entitle you to free treatment. And if you claim when you're not entitled, you could face a penalty charge of £100, plus the cost of your treatment. Thankfully, the NHS Eligibility Checker will help you find out if you can claim for free. Then next time you're at the dentist, you'll know exactly which box to tick. Search Check Before You Tick online today.
The rules say you can't have a big 4x4 SUV that combines power with fuel efficiency. But the new Vauxhall Grandland X Hybrid 4 breaks all the rules. The smart petrol-electric hybrid engine combines 300 horsepower with up to 204 mpg. That's right, 204. Search Grandland X Hybrid and test drive now at your local Vauxhall retailer. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Official WLTP Grandland X Hybrid 4 test figures. For comparison purposes only, obtained using combined battery power and fuel. Real-world figures may vary.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Apply T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Business is like a puzzle.
Can you make a call given this swirl of data?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to take a look at a corner of Reddit that is pushing markets around with our own Luke Kawa, Bloomberg Cross Asset Reporter. Plus, we'll take a a look at the cross-border flows of money with Brad Setzer, Senior Fellow for International Economics at the Council of Foreign Relations and Senior Advisor at Exante Data. Right now, though, let's head over to Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Lisa, stocks have certainly stayed higher for longer today than yesterday. Stock equities did gain for the first time in 5 days. Investors are digesting fresh evidence of the widening coronavirus outbreak and waiting for the President and CDC news conference at 6 Wall Street time this evening. The dollar is higher. Greg Boodle, BNP Paribas, U.S. head of equity and derivative strategy, tells Bloomberg this whole thing could be a roller coaster.
Yeah, absolutely. Our view has always been that if we do get a big break, which is now what we've seen, that this is likely to induce further selling and further deleveraging. So we certainly don't think that the volatility is behind us. We think we're going to get some more aggressive moves, both on the upside and the downside from here.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day, where we're seeing the upside for now. S&P 500's up 1.4%, up 43. The Dow's up 1.4%, up 377. And the Nasdaq's up 1.7%. Up 152. The 10-year is up 132nd with a yield of 1.34%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up 0.1% at $49.96 a barrel, well off earlier highs. COMEX gold is currently down 0.6% at $16.3970 an ounce. The dollar yen, 110.50. The euro, $1.886, and the British pound, $1.29.24. Papa John's has fallen after the pizza chain reported earnings that suggest little growth for its North American locations. Papa John's is down 8.6%. That's Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, our friends at Bloomberg Business Week have done it again with another fantastic cover. When the bull market gets weird. It's a strange story about the world of message boards and stock trading folks and kind of the impact they can have on individual stocks, maybe even the markets. Luke Kawa, cross-asset reporter, Bloomberg News, joins us here on our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. You've heard him here before. He is the author of that cover story for Bloomberg Business Week. What's going on in the world of Reddit and message boards and all that stuff?
So it's a fun story in that this is what we've been waiting for in a sense. It's the return of retail to the market. However, in a world where a lot of shares do cost, for instance, Tesla has surpassed $900 this year. Amazon well north of that figure. The ability of some retail investors to actually buy a share is fairly limited. So what do? We can buy these options. We can buy these kind of moonshot bets for much, much cheaper that have nonlinear payoffs and can be exponential. There's been 10,000% daily gains in some of these in the event that the underlying does rise sufficiently. So what's been going on is that there have been a few stocks that the online community of Wall Street Bets, a subreddit, has really latched onto. And you've seen underlying activity, call activity in those names go absolutely parabolic. And you've seen very, very outsized moves in those shares at the same time. So names like Tesla, names like Virgin Galactic, names like Lumber Liquidators, Plug Power, which is a fun example because it's literally, what's old is new again. That was a .com bubble favorite. So and they also think that this kind of activity, the call buying, is also sufficient to make their prophesied gains come about. Because what they're doing in buying a call, if you buy it from a dealer's not in the business of taking directional risk. So the dealer will say, hey, I'll write the call for you. We'll get that done, but I don't want that exposure. So dealer writes a call, buy stock. That's known as delta hedging. And if the underlying continues to go up, you have to adjust your delta hedge and buy even more. So when they read about this dynamic in a piece that we wrote about Tesla options, they kind of extrapolated this to the unreasonable degree that if we buy enough calls, these will never go down.
So I'm looking, just the concept that that's great. I'm taking a bigger step back. I mean, it's fascinating, but if you take a big step back, someone who's not familiar, 900,000 users are on this Reddit forum, r/Wall Street Bets or r/WSB. Who are these people?
It's very tough. I don't want to misgender the community, but it would seem to be a lot of males in the, let's call it 18 to 35 demo, and it would be locker room culture. I think to say it would be putting it very kindly.
So, I mean, this reminds me of kind of the day trading boom of, 10 or 15 years ago. And that kind of suggested, all right, this is the top of the market. When these, individuals are getting in and bidding up stocks to crazy levels, this might mark the top. What's the thought there?
I mean, could have happened, could have been. I mean, we're in a downdraft now. We're off the peaks. That this could have been the perfect blow off top signal that we were looking for in the event that we continue to extend to the downside in the stock market. What I think is definitely different this time is how localized a lot of this euphoria is. Like, yeah, sure, stocks in general around the world were having a great January, and you were starting to see just in general retail flows purely into stocks come back, but the localized nature of how just certain names were really seeing the activity and really getting pushed, whereas, back in the day, it was just everything getting pushed and people piling into everything. That's what kind of sets this apart and makes it look a little less scary. Also, this was barely getting off the ground. Retail involvement was really just only starting to come back when we've run into a bit of difficulty getting higher in the general market here. So it, that trend could have some staying power in the event that we're able to resume an uptrend.
The usernames, Soul Train RNS on Whole Gran, or really catchy, right? Recently unearthed. I'm just wondering, how much time do you spend on this forum?
Actually, this is not the subreddit I frequent the most often. My subreddit of choice is Spoiled Survivor. I like to try and get hints on which Survivor players might be voted off the island next, and Reddit's also fairly adept at that.
Wait, seriously?
Oh yeah,
how much time do you spend on that one?
That one I'd be embarrassed to say how much time I spend on it. But Wall Street Bets, this has been more of a job for me, just because it was in mid-January when I was noticing just some Tesla calls go off. Tesla was having a great week.
Yeah.
But the C700 strikes that were about to expire in 2 days and would have required Tesla to rally about 40% in 2 days, those are starting to see a lot of activity. And I was just like, what the heck is going on here? What in the world? Who could possibly want something like this? This is absolutely nuts. And that trail led me to Wall Street Bets.
Yeah, I remember, and you wrote a story about it, and it was a fantastic story, and your Business Week's cover story also fantastic. Luke Hawa, Bloomberg cross-asset reporter and correspondent for Survivor, and the potential next ejected contestant. Coming up, we're going to talk about money flows. We're going to talk with Brad Setzer, Senior Fellow for International Economics at the Council on Foreign Relations, a Senior Advisor at Exante Data. Right now, let's get the view from Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager there. Nathan.
Yeah, I got to try to go to the Human Resources Department for that Survivor gig. At any rate, President Trump is set to hold a news conference this evening with the Centers for Disease Control on efforts to combat the novel coronavirus known as COVID-19. Bloomberg's Amy Morris reports from Washington.
Markets to believe that the virus poses little risk to the U.S. The CDC warns the virus's spread in America is inevitable and could bring significant disruption to the world's largest economy. The mixed messages from top government officials show the balance that the administration is trying to strike, show control over the situation while avoiding any move that might spark a panic. The briefing is set for 6 p.m. Wall Street time. We'll bring it to you live here on Bloomberg Radio. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
Joe Biden may be hoping this Saturday's South Carolina primary will give his presidential campaign a boost. He did get a bump this morning in the form of an endorsement from the state's most powerful lawmaker, House Majority Whip James Clyburn.
If you send me out of South Carolina with a victory, there will be no stopping us.
Democratic moderates may be looking at more ways to stop the current front-runner overall, Bernie Sanders. Politico reports the Democratic National Committee is going to brief House Democrats tomorrow on the role of superdelegates at the Democratic Convention this summer. Speaker Nancy Pelosi reportedly told her caucus, "We have to know our power as the House of Representatives." Sanders reportedly wasn't mentioned by him, but many members of Congress on the Democratic side have raised alarm about him at the top of their ticket. Every citizen of Hong Kong is getting a one-time cash payment of 10,000 Hong Kong dollars. That's the equivalent of nearly 1,300 U.S. Economists are doubtful, though, that will spur growth as the city struggles to recover from political unrest and now coronavirus. I'm Nathan Hager. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
The Bloomberg Business.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
We can't always tell, but 1 in 5 people in the UK are disabled. So when we're all heads down, stampeding and charging because we're late for the bus or train, we could be doing more harm than we think. So let's not forget about the people we share our journeys with. Let's slow down a bit. Remember, it's everyone's journey.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres, ends 18th of March.
Taking it for a spin has changed. Giving it a whirl has changed. With £500 towards a qualifying new Vauxhall with 4.9% APR representative when you take a test drive, the rules have changed. Book your test drive this weekend. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Allowance provided as deposit contribution on qualifying new Vauxhalls. Conditional sale and personal contract purchase only. Subject to status. T's and C's. 18 plus Vauxhall Finance. Registered by 2nd of April 2020. Search Try Your New Vauxhall.
The moment you realise that radiator isn't warming up, it's chilly in London, and half the class are coming for a sleepover. The moment you realise you're covered by British Gas Home Care from £14 a month. That's just 46p a day, including parts and labour. Buy selected home care cover online by the 10th of March and get 1 month free. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas Home Care. Conditions apply. Prices vary by postcode.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
At Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are up as the markets are trying to find some stability after consecutive days of sharp selling. Investors are now waiting for more news on the coronavirus, which they are anticipating at 1800 or 6 p.m. Wall Street time as President Donald Trump and members of the CDC meet the press. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P 500 is up 1.2%, up 38. The Dow's up 1.2%, up 326. And the NASDAQ is up 1.5%, up 138. The 10-year is up 3/30 seconds. The yield is 1.34%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is currently down 0.3% at $49.77 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 0.6% at $16.3950 an ounce. The dollar yen stands at 110.47. The euro is $1.884, and the British pound $1.2925. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jerry.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
I'm struck by a story today on the Bloomberg Terminal trying to explain sentiment behind today's blip upward in equities. They say blip because a 1% move following the drops that we saw over the past few days looks relatively sanguine in terms of the severity. Blip-like. One quote here, an investor saying, investors are saying, okay, we have gotten a correction done. We've traded off the headlines. Now let's wait and see where the facts come in. Someone who's scouring the facts, Brad Setzer, Senior Fellow for International Economics at the Council on Foreign Relations and Senior Advisor at Exante Data, with extensive experience with the U.S. Treasury Department and beyond tracking international flows. Brad, you know, it would be really good without a sense of the data in terms of the slowdown currently in Asia. How was the data looking leading up to this period of time?
Well, the trade data, particularly the U.S. import data in Q4, was very weak. U.S. imports from China were down, let's say, 20% year over year in Q4, largely because of the still substantial tariffs that had been imposed over the previous 12 months. There's been some shift in supply chains to Vietnam, to Taiwan, but the scale of the shift in supply chains is actually fairly modest. I think the data in Q4 was telling us much more about trade destruction than trade diversion. And I think, we're going to obviously get another quarter of significantly less trade because China's largely been shut down. That doesn't tell us very much about the more fundamental forces reordering supply chains. It just tells us that there was a true exogenous shock from the coronavirus.
So, Brad, what's the data telling us about the economic impact on China right now from the virus? You say it's effectively shut down. We've seen numbers that maybe half of production shut down. I'm not sure kind of where that number comes out, but what do we think is going to be the ultimate impact on the economy of China?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be a very substantial slowdown. All the data for, burning coal to density of transportation is running closer to the lows of the Chinese New Year than to where it typically would be. That doesn't mean China's completely shut down, but it means it's operating well below capacity. And to state the obvious, in a typical week, you generate 2% or so of your economic output for the year. And so the longer China is operating at, say, 50% capacity, the bigger the fall in output. So I think increasingly forecasters are predicting not just a quarter-on-quarter fall in Chinese output, but a year-over-year fall. So the output in Q1 of this year would be below that of Q1 of last year. Now, to put that in context, remember that the Chinese economy in Q1 is typically 10% smaller than it is in Q4. So there's naturally a wide range of seasonal variation. The problem is that this wasn't anticipated. We weren't prepared for it. And so there's going to be more disruption in supply chains. And it will be a challenge to maintain income when people aren't working.
You said trade destruction more than trade diversion. That's what you observed from the data coming out of the fourth quarter. Does that actually help the United States remain a little more insulated from a breakdown in supply chains related to China?
I don't think the particulars of Q4 mean that the U.S. is more insulated.
Sure. Okay, fair
I think
point.
it is that, you know, the U.S. to a significant degree has an economy that produces, we spend most of our time producing services for each other. And so the relatively modest share of manufacturing in U.S. output and the relatively modest importance of Chinese demand to the U.S. economy both mean that the U.S. is relatively insulated, more insulated than, say, Europe, certainly more insulated than most of Asia from the direct effects of the disruption in China. Obviously, what we are not insulated from would be an outbreak of the virus in the United States.
Is there any good data that you've seen on what the economic impact could be if we do get what a lot of people feel like is an inevitable outbreak here in the U.S.?
Look, I would think that you might see I think it depends on the scale of the outbreak. It depends on the location of the outbreak. But if significant parts of the U.S. economy shut down for a couple of weeks, which, you know, you could in a bad scenario see, obviously that would produce a quarter-over-quarter contraction. Again, I wouldn't put too much emphasis on that just because that is the natural result of people staying at home as a precautionary measure. It doesn't indicate any loss of the economy's potential, but it does create a short-term problem for demand if people aren't working and aren't paid.
When you were working at the U.S. Treasury from 2011 to 2015, you dealt with Europe's financial crisis, Puerto Rico's debt crisis, a number of other financial shocks. Is there anything you can take away from that experience and apply to what we're experiencing now in terms of the tipping point for when something becomes more than a temporary disruption?
Well, I think you actually end up going back to first principles. You can't stop what you might call the supply shock, the fact that in order to limit the spread once the virus is established in a particular community, quarantine measures are necessary, and that's going to reduce output. What you can do is limit the second order effects. So you can provide people who can't go to work, even though they want to work, with income. You borrow a little bit of money, you distribute it. So you can protect the economy from entering into a self-sustaining downward cycle and buffer what is inevitably a short-term shock.
This is actually really important because Hong Kong is essentially deploying helicopter money right now. They're essentially passing out to individuals. Is that the right prescription?
Yes. I mean, if you all experience the kind of shock that Hong Kong is experiencing, remember, Hong Kong is a tourism-dependent economy, a travel-dependent economy, a trade-dependent economy, and travel between China and Hong Kong is essentially shut down. That has an economic impact. And Hong Kong is rich. The government has no shortage of budget buffers, and this is the time to use them.
Brad Setzer, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate your thoughts on this. Brad Setzer is the Stephen A. Tannenbaum Senior Fellow for International Economics at the Council of Foreign Relations and also a Senior Advisor at Ex-Ante Data, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. We appreciate you coming in and sharing your thoughts. Just looking at the market here, Lisa, kind of holding on some gains, giving back off of the highs, but still green on the screen. We've got the S&P up 25 points and the Dow up 207 points and NASDAQ up 103 points. So holding some gains here, but off the highs early.
I will say there is an incoherence right now between the ongoing downward shift in yields, even today, amid this little bit of a pop in U.S. equities.
Yes, and I also like to just call out oil because I think that's a good economic barometer for investors' expectations for growth. We have oil WTI crude below $50 a barrel here, $49.49 a barrel, so below, and it did hit a low of break below 49. So again, reflecting some concern there. Coming up, Balance of Power with David Weston. He will push the conversation forward. Certainly a look at the debates in the upcoming Super Tuesday. This is Bloomberg.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings. Interconnect.
Vodafone 5G will have the power to change your world. From driverless cars to virtual reality and real-time gaming. That's why we're rolling out 5G in London and across the UK. Discover Vodafone 5G on the UK's best mobile data network. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
NPerf testing awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance based on 35,664 tests on the NPerf app in the UK. Coverage may vary. Visit vodafone.co.uk.
Had the same job for the last 15 years?
working with the same people, in the same office, drinking tea from the same comedy mug, eating the same crayfish and rocket sandwich every lunchtime, using the same business jargon, and climbing the same greasy pole. What does that even mean? Then maybe it's time to switch it up, starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, I'm David Weston. Welcome to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. On the brief today, Rishad Salamat in Hong Kong on the continuing spread of the coronavirus across the globe. And Drew Armstrong right here in New York on what the United States is going to do to try to contain the virus right here. So Rishad, let's go to you. Thank you so much for your continued reporting over there. Explain to us where we are on the spread of the coronavirus as far as we know. President Trump says he thinks we're getting under control.
Well, absolutely. He said that the other day. And also Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, said also that they had the capacity now to limit what's going on, and that was working. Mr. Trump will be addressing the nation and the world in about 6 hours' time from now to give an idea of to what they might be doing next to prevent an expansion of this here as well. Don't forget, House Minority Leader Chuck Schumer also trying to finalize plans for an $8.5 billion program here, according to reports that Bloomberg has actually seen here as well. But nonetheless, we have a virus which continues to spread. In Iran, we've got 19 deaths. We've got the first one in Latin America, first case, I should say, in Brazil. On top of that, Greece, and let's not forget also the Middle East, Bahrain and Kuwait, also adding to the numbers that we have already. And other countries are preparing. The European Union, for one thing, the disease control of the European Commission, also battling down the hatches now as well, as over in Italy we see the death toll mount and also the number of cases also multiplied there as well. In Britain we have an isolation facility being set up at London's Heathrow Airport. This against this backdrop of a overseas expansion. When I say overseas, I mean outside of China. In China itself, actually, percentage-wise, the spread seems to be getting a bit slow. Hubei province, of course, is an anomaly. We've got 401 new cases in the last 24 hours there, as opposed to 401 overall for China. So actually, it's 401 in Hubei province here as well. So that's where we are, David. And, you know, there are economic consequences, naturally.
Well, exactly. Let's talk about those economic consequences. I mean, we always want to remember that at its base, this is a human tragedy, but it has economic and business consequences. And I suppose they may come in two different forms. One is the shutting down of factories, for example, in Hubei province, but also there's the secondary knock-on effect of the effect on consumer confidence, willingness to go out and spend money.
Well, that's it, isn't it? And we were talking yesterday about how you could perhaps cut interest rates by 25 basis points, but what difference would it make when families are so concerned about their loved ones' health and don't want to go out onto the streets? Taking a look at Hong Kong here, we had the budget today, and every Hong Kong permanent resident, that doesn't include me, will be getting $1,284 as sort of helicopter money here as well. But, belying that sort of joviality, it is a very serious problem. Vietnam, at the moment, virtually halving its growth projections for this year, looking at 6.3% growth. They were looking at 10.5% growth before here as well. Cathay Pacific base here in Hong Kong, 25,000 staff being asked to take unpaid leave for 3 weeks. So that gives you an idea of the scale of the problem. We've got over 100 aircraft that have been parked on the sides of Chek Lap Kok Airport, which is over there. Just really, David, I want to end on something. We've talked a lot at this time about how the suppression of information made things worse. I want to go back to 102 years ago to the Spanish flu, which ultimately led to something like the death of about 50 million people. And I'm not saying this is anything on that scale, but part of that was blamed on wartime censorship, so people couldn't actually get information as to what was going on. Let's hope that history doesn't repeat itself.
Yes, I should certainly hope. By the way, I wasn't even around for the Spanish flu, as I recall, 102 years ago. Thank you so much for that great reporting from Rishad Salamat over in Hong Kong. And now let's come back here to New York and Drew Armstrong to really cover about what the United States is doing or can be doing to try to at least deter the virus here, because we have, as Rishad said, we have the president addressing us at 6 o'clock this evening Eastern time.
Yeah, I think there's two key things to keep in mind here right now. On one hand, we only have about a dozen cases that have been diagnosed in the United States, most of those in travelers from China, and the flow of travel from China has been greatly reduced. On the other hand, you have top officials at the CDC warning that, hey, this is coming here. We are going to see more cases. We need to be ready for this and to see a situation like we have beginning to emerge in Europe, in the United States, and giving some potentially very dire sounding outlooks about how that would look like what that would look like in the U.S. in terms of the response here. So there's really two sets of ideas that I think people need to be able to combine. The idea that, hey, so far this may not be here, but if you look at how this is beginning to slowly spread around the world, or at least emerge around the world, that probably does happen here in the United States.
Are we confident that we know the way it's transmitted? Because that seems to be a key element in figuring out how to stop it, or at least deter it if we can't altogether stop it.
I think from what we know right now, that this is like any other respiratory disease, and that the steps you would take to not get the flu or a cold, if you're living in New York City, are exactly the same ones that you would take to not get coronavirus. That means washing your hands, using hand sanitizer, covering your mouth when you cough, not, holding onto a subway pole and then rubbing your eye. I mean, all those things that we hopefully practice in cold and flu season, same playbook right here.
Very fascinating. Okay, thanks so much to Drew Armstrong for that report on the U.S. efforts to deter the coronavirus. We're going to bring you President Trump's news conference on the coronavirus at 6 p.m. Eastern time this evening. And now let's find out what's going on with the markets and how they may be reacting to some of the developments. And actually, as I look at equity markets, we have an uptick today.
Well, we have an uptick, but we actually have a bearish development over just the last, let's call it 15 to 20 minutes, because at the highs, the S&P 500, talk about a strong rebound rally from the 4-day sell-off, had been up 1.7%. Now the S&P 500 is up just 0.5%. And even when each of the major indices was up more than 1%, there were cracks in today's rebound rally. Oil is lower, bonds are higher, the Dow Transport's up just modestly. And at this point, the Dow Transport's actually down about 1%. So it seems like the bulls who wanted to buy in, the buy the dip mentality that we've had over the last couple of years, not working right now. Those coronavirus fears coming back into the picture. And worrisome is the fact that the Dow Transport's absolutely sliced below that 200-day moving average, well below it in the past, without exception. That has meant that S&P 500 will go down to at least its 200-day moving average, which means more work to the downside, perhaps.
So, Abigail, as you follow these markets, because you do it very closely, is it basically at this moment just keying off of whatever we get, good, bad, or indifferent about the coronavirus? For example, as we look forward to 6 o'clock this evening, Eastern time, will the markets be really looking for what President Trump has to say with his CDC officials?
Oh, absolutely. I have to believe that's the case. And the futures markets will be open at that time, so it's possible to track what the live reaction is to what President Trump does say and what sort of strategy could be outlined at that time. At this point, though, in terms of the markets themselves, there's so much technical buying and selling going on, more so selling. So it's these key technical levels and these moving averages that traders and investors want to pay attention to. Algos seem to be very much programmed into that 200-day moving average on a number of the different indices. Even in Europe, the stock 600 went below its 200-day moving average. All of this does suggest, especially when you put it together with the commodity complex, because the commodity complex on the year down about 9%, the S&P 500 down just about 2%. When you have a divergence of that sort between various risk assets, it tends to suggest a disagreement, more volatility ahead. Right now, we had been in that period, David, last year of that melt up of small moves. Now we're back into a period of big moves, and right now they seem to be more to the downside.
Fascinating, really helpful. Thank you very much, Abigail Doolittle, for that report on the markets. And now we turn to Mark Crumpton because he's here with Bloomberg First Word News.
David, thank you. The coronavirus continues to spread. Brazil has confirmed its first case. Officials say a 61-year-old Brazilian who recently traveled to Italy for work tested positive for the illness, while dozens have been tested from Mexico to Brazil with similar symptoms. This marks the first confirmed case in Latin America. President Trump will hold a news conference at 6 p.m. New York time to discuss the outbreak. You can watch it here on Bloomberg Television. Hong Kong is trying to cushion the economic blow from the coronavirus and political unrest. The government unveiled a budget that's packed with giveaways. One of them, a one-time cash payment of almost $1,300 for every adult permanent resident. Economists are forecasting Hong Kong's economy will shrink for a second year in a row. Turkey is signaling it may try to challenge Russian control of Syrian airspace. The Turkish President Recep Erdogan said today he's looking for ways to strike attacking Syrian government forces from their own skies. Turkey has raised about 10,000 troops in Idlib in its biggest move to counter the Syrian government offensive in the 9-year civil war. In the UK, opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn accused Boris Johnson of being a part-time prime minister. Johnson failed to visit flood-stricken parts of the UK last week. Instead, he stayed at a government-owned country mansion. Johnson also was criticized by members of his own Conservative Party. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Coming up, Palmetto State Firewall. The former Vice President Joe Biden picks up a key endorsement in South Carolina. But will it be enough? We head to Charleston next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Jason Kelly and Carol Massar speak to some of the most...
I'm Peter Jones. Lifting business performance is critical in today's uncertain times. But how do you keep up with changing regulations and rising demands? How do you break free from manual processes to raise productivity? The answer is technology that elevates performance and comes with industry-leading support. Over 1 million UK businesses, including my investment group, trust Sage to manage their finances, operations and people.
Elevate your business today with our free performance review. Visit sage.com/perform.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
If you see a variable speed limit sign on the motorway, it means do not exceed this speed limit. It's important. Variable speed limits are there to keep us safe, steady the flow of traffic, and keep us moving. Because we all want to be somewhere. Somewhere like taking the kids for a quiet day out at the safari park. Follow the signs. Keep us all moving. Search Highways England motorways to find out more.
The famous five were at home discussing their next adventure. "Let's visit Tower Bridge," said Dick. "Or Cardiff Castle," added Julian. "St. Michael's Mount," cried Anne. Dick jumped up. "Wherever we're going, we'll need to leave right now." "Relax," said George. "It's faster than you think by train. Anyway, we can't go yet. You're still in your pajamas." With faster journeys across our network, adventures are closer than you think. Great Western Railway. Adventures start here. Terms and conditions apply. Selected routes only.
Fillet of fish from a dish, share box and evening frocks, Big Mac down a cul-de-sac and even under a drying rack, veggie deluxe and power cuts, medium fries in rainy skies, or maybe cheeseburgers in the bath. How daft. Wraps through cat flaps, nugs on rugs, or perhaps a McChicken sandwich to the river. Because now, we deliver. Download Uber Eats and enjoy McDonald's at home. At participating McDonald's, see mcdonalds.co.uk/McDelivery to see if there's one near you. Serving times and delivery fee apply. See Uber Eats app.
Do you go on the same holiday every year? To the same country, in the same hotel, with the same sea view, visit the same ancient monuments, lay by the same dolphin-shaped pool, meet the same Barrys and Sandras, and wear the same Hawaiian shirt that you'd never wear at home? Then maybe it's time to switch it up, starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Bayless. Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Also saying that if he's not able to get the 1,991 delegates that are needed to technically clinch the nomination, that he would get a plurality of those delegates, and that will allow him to say that he is, in fact, the Democratic nominee. From there, however, the whispers in those spin room, not really whispers, but the chatter in the spin room last night, David, this is the last point I'll make, is that expect people to drop out sometime after Super Tuesday next week, and that would mean that in the next round of contests in the weeks to come, this field will be very much more narrow, and the contrast will only grow sharper. David?
Okay, thanks so very much to Bloomberg's chief Washington correspondent, Kevin Turley, who's done a terrific job down there in South Carolina covering that debate. And for their analysis of what we saw last night, we welcome now Bloomberg contributor Jeannie Zaino. She's political science professor at Iona College here in New York, and in Washington, Lanny Chen. He's a fellow at the Hoover Institution. So, Jeannie, I'll start with you and ask you basically what's going to make a difference in this primary. And let me start with one thing. We have Congressman Clyburn earlier today, coming out and endorsing the former Vice President Biden. This is what he had to say.
I've known for a long time who I would vote for. But I had not decided whether or not to share it with the public. But I want the public to know that I'm voting for Joe Biden. I know Joe. We know Joe. But most importantly, Joe knows us.
So, Jeannie, we know Jim Clyburn traditionally has been a very influential figure in the Democratic Party in South Carolina. Do endorsements mean this year what they have meant in past years?
I think that's the big question. You know, he is so incredibly well respected. He's got such an important voice in the state. And yet we've seen these type of typical endorsements from more establishment figures like Clyburn, who has a really powerful position in the House and is close to Nancy Pelosi, may not carry the weight that they used to, particularly with the base that's supporting Bernie Sanders and particularly with young people. So I think it's a question, although, you know, for Joe Biden, I think this is an important moment and it should matter, but I don't know if we're going to see that because, as we were just discussing in Nevada, though the lack of an endorsement by the Culinary Union did not do much. The Latinos still went out, members of the union still went out and supported Bernie Sanders despite their criticism of him.
So Lanny, one of the things I'm grasping for, at least after the debate last night, is what is going to make a difference? Maybe endorsements, maybe not endorsements. Will issues make a difference? Because last night there were some issues mentioned along the way, but that didn't seem to me to be a debate fundamentally about issues.
No, it wasn't. It was not a debate fundamentally about issues. I do think this contrast on Medicare for all that Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have embraced, and then the more so-called moderate options proposed by Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden and others, I do think that dividing line is going to be important as we move ahead in this campaign. But I do think what it's coming down to, I think what Democratic voters are looking at, as far as I can tell, is who's got that fire in the belly to go up against Donald Trump? Who is going to be a candidate who can present and prosecute a case against Trump? Not so much the substance of that case, really kind of who's got the wherewithal to take him on. And so that's why I think you saw Joe Biden get a little bit more aggressive last night. I thought it was his best debate of the season so far. And so I think it's going to be those personality elements or those elements of the style with which these candidates take on Donald Trump that's going to be more significant in this campaign.
So, Jeannie, I find that fascinating, and it goes maybe to the electability that we've talked about before. Is it turning into who can be as Trump is? That is to say, as fiery and as explosive. And Elizabeth Warren was combative last night.
Yeah, she was combative. Pete Buttigieg is a very good debater. I agree with Lonnie that Joe Biden had his best performance in a debate. And it is the one thing that unifies all Democrats, right, is who can beat Donald Trump. And yet it is striking to me that again last night, just like in the debate in Nevada, very little was taken to Donald Trump. They were fighting each other in this sort of circular firing squad, yet very little fire was turned on Donald Trump. So in my mind and in the mind of some other people, Donald Trump came out a real winner of this debate last night. Democrats are going to have to take it to Donald Trump. Maybe they're going to do that after Super Tuesday when this field winnows. But this thing is going to get very tight with Donald Trump very quick if they don't winnow this field fast and look at Donald Trump and start to take him on some of these issues.
Lonnie, what about it? Did Donald Trump win the debate last night?
Yeah, I mean, anytime Democrats are focusing their fire on one another and not on him, I think it's a benefit. But more broadly, I think the reason why the Trump team has to be feeling very good about where they're positioned is because of Bernie Sanders' continued success. I mean, it's remarkable, David. You've got a candidate who's the leading candidate for the Democratic Party who's essentially embraced Cuba and the history, the repressive history of the Cuban regime. And that doesn't even seem to really trigger a response amongst the electorate. And I mean, I guess we'll see over these next couple of weeks if it does. But so far, at least, it's not really seemingly been a factor. And so I think for the Trump team, they're looking at this gleefully. I think they like the fact that candidates are attacking one another. Having been involved in a number of these competitive primaries, I can just say it's not always necessarily a bad thing when candidates are trying to make each other better. There isn't always necessarily a bad thing to candidates attacking each other. You see what happens in uncompetitive situations. People come out unprepared. So there is a potentially silver lining to this yelling we saw last night.
So, Jeannie, I think it's received wisdom. Typically, we don't elect presidents according to foreign affairs. It's domestic issues. At the same time, pick up on what Lonnie said, because it wasn't just that Bernie Sanders is saying, yeah, there's some good things about Castro. There are some good things about Russia, things like that. But he also last night took on the United States and said, we've had terrible foreign policy with respect to overthrowing the Shah of Iran and overthrowing the regime in Guatemala back in the 50s and things. Is that really going to work on the Democratic side these days?
You know, I don't think it's going to work in those states that Democrats need to win, in these swing states where they need to win this election. I don't think it is going to be a selling point to have Bernie Sanders out there in Florida, for instance, talking about the benefits of reading and literacy in Cuba under Fidel Castro without, at the very least, taking on the evil aspects of that regime, of which there are many. So I do think this is a problem for Democrats. I agree with you. Foreign policy seldom elects presidents unless we're in a crisis time. But this is, you know, I think a little bit broader than just a foreign policy issue. This is who Bernie Sanders is and has been. And as the American public gets more and more introduced to him, I think it's going to be hard to sell in places like Virginia, South Carolina, Florida, Pennsylvania, and elsewhere.
Okay, thank you so much to our panel of Jeannie Zaino here in New York and Lonnie Chen in Washington. Always good to have you with us. And don't forget to tune in to our special coverage of Super Tuesday. We're going to have the analysis of the Democratic contest March 3rd. That's going to be starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Still ahead here, Disney's new CEO and his first big challenge, perhaps. It may just be the coronavirus. It's our stock of the hour. That's next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Our relationship with Asia is simple. Find the most experienced journalists.
These countries will need each other more and more in the future.
Let them gather the best data and experts.
Let's get to Singapore now and our guest.
Then bring everything they find straight to you.
Let's talk about where you are. There's quite a lot of headwinds there too.
Actually, it's not simple. It's just better. Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Time now for the stock of the hour. Disney shares are in the red after the company named Bob Chapek as the new CEO, ending years of speculation over who would come after Bob Iger. Both men spoke to Bloomberg about Chapek's strategy after the announcement yesterday.
I intend to double down on the exact same strategies that Bob has established 15 years ago that have served us so well. The thing I've really taken away from Bob Iger's legacy is get the content right and everything else kind of follows suit.
We welcome now Abigail Doolittle for what the move may mean for shareholders of the Walt Disney Company. So what does it mean? As I say, they're down right now.
They are down right now. You know what's so interesting about what Bob Chapek was just saying? He's planning on doubling down on Bob Iger's strategy. So everybody has known that Bob Iger at some point would step down as CEO. But I think a lot of people are caught off sides by the fact that it was so sudden, so abrupt. Why is that? The last quarter relative to streaming was very good. Of course, streaming just happened. So that's something to ponder. And I think that is one reason why the stock is down, wondering why that's the case. The second is why Bob Chapek? Because some thought that Kevin Mayer, the head of streaming, could get it. But you could make the case, and you would know more about this than me in a lot of ways, that Bob Chapek, a 27-year veteran, he will be just the 7th CEO at Disney. So loyalty, clearly a big deal there. That could be a big piece. But also, he started off with DVDs back in the day. He then went to retail. Now he is the head of parks, or was the head of parks. That's their biggest revenue segment. So that may actually really be the reason.
Yeah, I mean, I know Kevin Mayer. I've worked closely with him. He's a very, very smart deal maker and has really been the architect of a lot of the deals with Bob Iger that Bob Iger has done. At the same time, Bob Chapek really knows distribution and marketing and things like that. It may say something about where they think the company goes next. Do they need more big deals, or do they need to really execute on the deals that Iger's already done?
That's a great point, David, because of course the biggest deal that was just done, Fox, and then over the last 15 years, Pixar and Lucasfilms and some of these other ones. So they really do have that legacy content in place to some extent. So in terms of, to your point, that Bob Chapek, more of somebody who can get things done on a day-to-day basis, especially around these parks, because let's face it, right now with this coronavirus, I was just looking at a chart. I'm stunned. This stock is almost in a bear market from its all-time high. Much of that coming just in the last week on the coronavirus fears.
Well, and they've got Shanghai, of course. They've got Hong Kong as well. Yes. We don't want to forget about that either. And in the meantime, they also have substantial cruise lines, Disney does.
That is an amazing point that you make there, because all of the turmoil that we have seen around the coronavirus tragedy and cruise lines. When you think about Disney, I first think about those parks. So as you mentioned, they've closed those Asian ones. We now have the CDC saying it's when, not if. That could affect operations here. But to your point, these cruise lines, who wants to get on a cruise line right now? So they've invested a lot of money there. Again, parks, I believe cruise lines, I'm not 100% on this, is included in that 37% segment. That could be a real hit. That could be a real problem.
Seems like they got great assets, and they'll come through this at some point. Okay, thank you so much to Abigail Doolittle. Up next, the United States prepares for a possible coronavirus pandemic. We speak with a doctor who's been studying coronaviruses for nearly 4 decades. That's coming up. This is Balance of Power, and we are on Bloomberg Television and on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The coronavirus isn't letting up, but U.S. stocks are posting modest gains after Germany's health minister warned that the European nation is at the beginning of the coronavirus epidemic. The Dow is up 82 points, S&P up 10, the Nasdaq climbing 50. New home sales rose in January, reaching the highest level in almost 13 years. It's another sign the property market is on the rebound. Amazon has caught a case of coronavirus as some of its small merchants are cutting back on ad spending. Many worry about running out of inventory on stuff that comes from China due to factory closings and other virus-related slowdowns. And things are looking better for the music industry. Sales of recorded music jumped 13% last year to the highest level since 2006. The growth was driven by streaming, which now accounts for nearly 80% of record sales. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man. You, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners. Revisions, return policies. There are so many ways to redo a decision.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Do they have any path other than the courts?
Except here, we have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war. Are there winners?
So that you can too.
How does your modeling have to pivot to reflect a different scenario?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, Joe Biden's struggling presidential campaign got a boost today. He claimed one of South Carolina's most coveted endorsements. Congressman Jim Clyburn, the highest-ranking black member of Congress, threw his support behind the former vice president. The move comes 3 days before South Carolina's primary and 6 days before Super Tuesday. The Pentagon says it needs at least $167 billion over the next 5 years to strengthen and modernize the U.S. nuclear weapons program. The proposal includes $29 billion for next year, increased gradually to $38 billion in 2025. The plan reflects a major boost to an effort started under former President Obama to replace aging nuclear systems. The violence in India has claimed more lives. Officials now say at least 24 people were killed, nearly 200 others injured in 3 days of clashes in New Delhi. Protesters were demonstrating against India's new religion-based citizenship law. The clashes were the worst communal riots in the Indian capital in decades. A $13.5 billion settlement between victims of California's wildfires and PG&E, the utility blamed for causing them, was supposed to bring some peace to the victims. Instead, many say they are being forced to fight for their piece of the pie. More than 81,000 people have filed claims, and individual homeowners worry they will be pushed to the back of the list. They're also unhappy that half the settlement will be paid in PG&E stock instead of cash. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
And we have some breaking news right now. A red headline crossing the Bloomberg. The Trump administration reportedly has decided to pare exemptions for oil refineries from U.S. requirements to use biofuels. This comes in response to a federal court ruling earlier last month. That's according to two people familiar with the matter. As we know, this has been an issue of some controversy with particularly the farm lobby in the White House saying we really should cut back on these exemptions, have higher requirements to use biofuels, things like ethanol. And reportedly now, the Trump administration, in fact, will go along with that and cut back on the exemptions for biofuels. Now I want to return to the coronavirus. It has continued to spread with the first confirmed case in Latin America down in Brazil. And President Trump is scheduled to speak at 6 p.m. Eastern Time today about U.S. efforts to control the epidemic. We welcome now Dr. Samuel Perlman. He's professor in departments of microbiology and immunology and also of pediatrics at the University of Iowa. So, Doctor, thank you so much for being with us. Start with the most basic things. How can one contract this virus as far as we know?
As far as we know, most people will contract it via respiratory route. They will get it on their hands and then convey it to their face, to their mouth or their nose. That may also be spread through the air, but this is much less likely. I should say spread through the air at a distance greater than 3 feet. This is considered aerosolized virus, and we think it may have a component, but we haven't really proven that for this new virus infection. There's also some concern that it's spread by other routes, such as through feces. But again, this is all considered to be minor right now compared to the major respiratory and contact route of spread.
Obviously, there's been a lot of concern about this when it was first identified out in Wuhan, but I think it grew substantially when it showed up in northern Italy, and now, as I said, we have a case in Brazil. Is it surprising that it's popping up in various places?
It doesn't surprise me. I think that it all started in Wuhan, but this virus spreads from person to person, so somebody may not even know that they were near somebody who came from Wuhan or who came from Wuhan 2 people ago. So given this kind of virus, it's not a big surprise that it's spreading.
The CDC yesterday said that we should be prepared for the real possibility. In fact, they said the certainty sooner or later that we'll have some communities exposed to this in the United States. What is the basis for them saying that? Is that your conclusion as well? We're going to have it here in some significant numbers?
Yeah, I think it's very hard to keep respiratory viruses out. I think people are trying to do the best they can at doing this by quarantining people, identifying people who are at high risk for having the virus. But if you have a virus that's going to be contagious when people just start developing symptoms, it's very hard to know how to detect them and who you're going to screen. So it's just difficult. I think people are trying to do the best they can.
So what are the U.S. efforts as far as you understand them? Who's in charge? Is it CDC?
I think the CDC is the Department of Human Health Services, of course, cares a lot about this as well, but I think the CDC is in the front line of this.
And what sorts of things should they be doing, are they doing? As far as you can tell, are they taking the steps that needs to be taken?
Well, what they're doing now is trying to make sure that people come into the country are free of the virus. That's about the best that you can do right now, I think. And then after that, if we start seeing cases here, you'll have to figure out management of quarantining and identifying people who are potentially contagious, making sure that large mass gatherings, and that could even include a school, doesn't become a place where virus can spread. This was illustrated on the cruise ships off of Japan, where putting everybody together for a period of time was a perfect setup for the virus spreading among people.
Well, we also think of things not just schools and public gatherings, but also things like factories and businesses. There are some reports here that the businesses are shutting down and telling people to go home and work at home. For example, a Canary Wharf over in London that happened with yesterday. So is that something we are prepared to do here in the United States?
I think that one can't say one's ever prepared to do it until it happens, and then you have to be prepared to do it. So I think people could and should be thinking about those kinds of scenarios, because this is the way the virus will spread when you have a large numbers of people in close proximity, and one of them's infected, and you have a virus that spreads easily. That's the setup for infecting more people. It's just more practical. It's practical sense rather than anything that's medical.
As I said, I believe you've been studying coronaviruses of various sorts for almost 40 years now. Is there anything particularly out of the ordinary about this one? Does this one, so far at least, fit in with what you've seen before?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because before 2003, we had cold coronaviruses, and those spread pretty similarly to this virus in the sense that people were they had a cold, and it's like any other cold. It spreads easily, but no one really cared because it was an upper respiratory tract mostly, and cold spread. And then after that, when we had the SARS coronavirus and MERS coronavirus epidemics, that seemed to be viruses that were confined to the lower lungs. So they didn't care too much about the upper airways. The result was a bad virus. There's a lot of people got really sick with it, and 10% died in the case of SARS. But you weren't really contagious until you were sick. But this virus is a mix of the two, so it uses the same receptor for entry into cells as one of the upper airway viruses, and also that the SARS virus uses in the lower airway. So you have a situation where I think probably most people get an upper airway kind of infection, maybe a cold-like disease, maybe a little more than that, and then they'll be better. And then for other people, it goes into the base of their lungs, so they have more like the SARS kind of clinical disease that we saw 15 years ago. So it's a mix of both.
Okay, thank you so very much, Doctor. Really appreciate it. That was helpful. Dr. Stanley Perlman of the University of Iowa. And we'll bring you President Trump's news conference on the coronavirus. That's coming out at 6 p.m. Eastern Time today. Now we're going to turn back to the presidential race and where we stand going into the South Carolina primary, and for that matter, Super Tuesday next week. To give us the lay of the land, we welcome now Larry Sabato. He's director of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia. He comes to us today from Charlottesville, Virginia. So thank you so much for joining us, Larry. Where do we stand as far as we can tell? We now just had this endorsement from Jim Clyburn of Vice President Biden. Where do we stand going into Saturday?
Well, Clyburn's endorsement is big for Biden. They've been quietly promising this for a long time, and now it's happened. And at the right moment, just before Saturday's South Carolina primary, which is do or die for Joe Biden. He either wins that convincingly or his campaign is over. He can certainly stay in through as many primaries as he wants, but he's never going to be able to accumulate the delegates that he needs. However, this is his one narrow path to come back if he does really well in South Carolina, and I think that means at least 4, 5, 6 points, if not more, against Bernie Sanders. Then he goes into Super Tuesday. That's 14 states on Tuesday, including a lot of southern states where you have large African-American populations, which is supposed to be Biden's strength. So he could be on the comeback trail if he does well Saturday. And Clyburn is key to his doing well on Saturday.
At this point, is there anyone who can really get more delegates than Bernie Sanders going into the convention of Milwaukee? I didn't say he'd necessarily have a majority of the delegates, but more delegates than he will get.
It's going to be tough. I wouldn't say it's impossible because we really just started the delegate allocations and we only have had 3 small states vote. So I'm not going to say it's impossible. I am going to say it's very difficult because everything I see, every poll and sounding from individual states indicates that while Bernie Sanders may only get 30 or 35% of a primary vote as opposed to a caucus where he does better, 30-35% of a primary vote, and therefore maybe 35-40% of the delegates, there may be 60 or 65% of the delegates for other people, but it's all divided up. So odds are he'll end up getting a plurality of delegates. He's not going to have a majority. And notice what he's been saying. If I have the plurality, I must be nominated. And everyone else says, oh, no, it's not going to be that way. We've always required a majority. And they're right. It has always been a majority. But, they could be faced with a Hobson's choice. Either you give the nomination to Bernie Sanders and accept whatever's coming in November, or you take it away from him, consolidate the 60 or 65% that's not with him, and face a walkout by the Sanders delegates and voters come November.
Yeah, Larry, factor money into it, because Super Tuesday particularly requires a lot of money for a lot of those television and radio buys, as well as social media for that matter, to succeed. Who has the edge there?
Well, obviously, Bloomberg has a great deal of money. Steyer does too, but Steyer could do reasonably well in South Carolina. He's put a lot of time and effort into it, and a number of polls have had him in the mid or even upper teens. So he could be a factor there. I have a hard time seeing how he translates it to other states quickly. But Bloomberg could. Bloomberg has been everywhere all the time. His performance in the first debate and last night's debate, in my view, was mediocre to bad. But you see, all I saw were Bloomberg ads leading up to the debate, 2 hours. During the debate, he had ads. After the debate, he had ads. And so you add all that up and you realize, how much does his debate performance really matter? Maybe not all that much. Well, Biden has almost no money, David. That's the problem for Biden. He has very little money.
Yeah, I was going to ask just the question you posed. Of course, Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of our parent company. We want to remind people of that as we talk about him. But how much does the debate performance matter? I mean, I watched that debate last night. There was an awful lot of heat and light. I'm not sure exactly how much substance there was to it. But are people looking at that and deciding who they want to be the next president of the United States?
Well, they have been. I think the debates to this point have actually driven some of the ups and downs in the polls, and some of the candidates have really benefited from good debate performances. I didn't see anybody who had a good debate performance last night. How could you see anybody? They were interrupting one another. It was messy, nasty, unruly, out of control. Use whatever term you want. I thought it was a disaster of a debate for the Democratic Party and for the candidates, not just for the network.
And how much is it going to really give them a candidate that will prevail over Donald Trump come November? I also wonder about that, because normally we talk about Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania. We haven't even talked about them.
Yeah, well, the way things are going, we can expand that list quite a bit. Look, all the basic factors are moving in Trump's direction. But I also have to say, we know Donald Trump. And Donald Trump can disrupt those factors with some tweets or a rally or doing or saying all kinds of outrageous things at any moment. So this is less certain than it would be for a president who had a great economy and was, let's say, normal. Well, we don't have that situation. So I'm not going to shut anything down until we have to pull the curtain down.
As a student of politics, because you are a real student of politics, what do you make of the fact that we had Donald Trump, who really ran, if anything, against the Republican establishment, I think you can say, the party last time, and now we have a Bernie Sanders as the front runner, who certainly isn't embraced by the Democratic establishment this time. What do you make of that, the sort of almost breakdown or pushing aside the traditional structure of the parties?
Our institutions, not just our parties, our institutions, constitutional and otherwise, have been in decline for a long time. And it's caused many of us who study the process of democracy and how it works and how it doesn't work. It's caused us to be very, very concerned. I think there's plenty of justification for worry. We're not just being worrywarts. We're going to have to see a reverse in this, and I don't know how it's going to happen without leadership. And we don't have that leadership right now, potentially in either party.
Okay, Larry, really helpful to have you with us as always. It's Larry Sabato. He's the director of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia down in Charlottesville. Coming up, former Democratic governor of South Carolina, Jim Hodges, on what Democrats need to do in his state to challenge President Trump in November. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Leaders are born.
What does it take?
For centuries, Welsh farmers have been perfecting the balance between maintaining the spectacular landscapes of Wales while producing delicious lamb and beef. Lucky for us, we have everything we need from the elements: grass, rainwater, and a whole lot of pride. Sustainability is key as we continue to work in harmony with our surroundings to bring you a plate that's uniquely Welsh. It's in the taste. Learn more at eatwelshlamandwelshbeef.com.
Want an easier way to run your business and take payments? You want Square. Whatever your business, sync it all together seamlessly with Square's integrated point-of-sale software, hardware, and e-commerce tools to make sure everything's square at the end of the month. Square is there whether you're taking payments for Square meals or Square extensions, squaring off your account, squaring up with your supplier, trading in Cathedral Square, or invoicing clients in Leicester Square. With no long-term contracts, no wonder millions of businesses around the globe have gone Square. Visit square.com/UK to learn more. And go Square. Authorised by the Financial Conduct Authority for the provision of payment services.
WW Weight Watchers Reimagined have a new customised weight loss programme, MyWW, where no foods are off limits. Just fill out a simple assessment and get matched to a plan that suits you. You love eating carbs, cooking at home, or eating out? No problem with this new customised plan. Discover which new MyWW plan can make losing weight easier for you. Shape up for spring and pay just $9.95 per month. Offer ends 29th of February. Digital plan price. Subscription fees and conditions apply. Mainland UK only. See website for details.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save.